All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. So I switched it up a little. We have a new background today. I figured we needed to change it up for this new kind of divergence into away from the ins and outs of digestion and dysfunction. And so today we're going to talk about cleansing, fasting, and detoxing, what all those things mean and how they intersect. This is me, you know. I think all of you have been here for the last couple, so you can find me at that email address. I think you all have it, and I'll put it at the end too, in case you miss it. So number one, cleanse, fast, detox. What's the difference? How do these intersect? What does it all mean? We're going to start with some just basic definitions. So fasting, a true fast is pure clean water and nothing else. Some people even say that fasting is nothing at all, no water, no food. And there are accounts of people doing food and water free completely for a couple of weeks. We can't really live without water for more than 2 weeks. But to me, true fasting is really water. There are juice and other liquids that are called fasting, and it is and it isn't. True fasting is really just water, and that should really be done supervised. But we'll talk a little bit about when these are useful and how to choose what to do. So cleansing can be food and or liquids or a combo, and the idea is to clean out toxins and reset bodily systems. And we're going to talk about what that means. And then detoxing is just a process that happens with both of these things. So detoxing is the process that your body undergoes to rid itself of chemicals, mold or mycotoxins, heavy metals, anything else that might be hiding in the body tissues. So it happens anytime you decrease your caloric intake, and especially if you're doing things actively to clean out the system. So fasting, again, is water only. And humans can safely do water fasts for a pretty long period of time, although most of us don't do that anymore. Some of the requirements, if you were to undergo true fasting, is you have to take time out of your ordinary life because you really do need a lot more rest than usual. It's a little bit like throwing your body off a cliff, and it can reset things very fast. It can take inflammation down. But if you don't lead up to it, ease your way in, the detox symptoms can be pretty debilitating. The reintroduction needs to be carefully guided, both back into your life and into eating. And this is often done in our culture, at least, for chronic health conditions. There's a place up north, I think it's called True North, that's a medically supervised water fasting clinic. And it's great. They've got all kinds of research studies on how it really helps with diabetes and heart disease. And then historically, fasting is done, this type of fasting is done as a spiritual practice. There's a lot that could be its own talk, but cultures all over the world have used fasting as part of an individual spiritual practice. And I just added a little quote. There's a great book by Stephen Buhner. I love him in general. All of his books on Lyme are great as well. But he has written a lot of other books about plants, and he wrote one called The Transformational Power of Fasting. I don't agree with everything in that book, but it's a really good overview of just fasting and cleansing and detoxing. So this is a really beautiful quote about some of the other reasons that people might go into a fast. One way to revitalize the self is to fast. And although this is sometimes used as a way to escape the body, it is also a means for truly coming to inhabit the body, to experience its sacredness, to find not only holiness, but wholeness. And I highlighted that part. The highlight is my own, not his, but I highlighted that truly coming to inhabit. Because a lot of times fasting in our culture, like this water fasting, is considered trying to transcend something or get away from the body. And in this context, we're really talking about healing the body and being more embodied. So then cleansing, and this is the bulk of what we're going to talk about and what I'm going to lead the group to do if people decide they want to do it. There's many, many ways to go about cleansing the body. So it's really customizable, which is why it's really my favorite way for the general public. I do other things with individuals, but in groups, this is the easiest thing to do. It's always best if you can slow down your life a little bit, even take a few days off of work, because rest is important. And even with mild cleansing, there's going to be detox symptoms, and you're going to feel a little tired, and it's always better to rest more when you can. The inflammation is slower generally when we do it this way. The detox symptoms can happen. They're generally more mild, but they, depending on how toxic someone is, they can still be pretty debilitating. And then the reintroduction is usually faster and simpler because we're eating food or drinking liquids that aren't that far removed from our normal diet. So it's not as tricky to add things back in. So this is a starting point. I always tell people if they want to do a cleanse, this is it's a reset. So it's only a starting point, but if you really want to see changes long term, you can sort of think of a cleanse as jump starting the process. But before you dive in, you really want to make sure that you're kind of dedicated to the long-term diet and lifestyle changes, because that's really what is going to make you feel better for the rest of your life, not just for maybe 5 days of a cleanse or 7, however long you decide to do it. So then, kind of knowing what we're talking about here with fasting and cleansing, the other question is it right for you? Is it something you should do right now with your current circumstance and your current health concerns and goals? This is something people often don't really think about, and I like people to just ask themselves these questions. So here's a few things to consider, just some questions. I personally have done a lot of different fasts and cleanses myself. I got really into it when I was in naturopathic school in my 20s, and did it periodically over the course of my 30s. I've dabbled in lots of different things and tried out a lot of different things on myself. And now, 15, 20 years later, these are sort of the things that I've come to through my own trial and error. So thinking about what your goal is and how much support do you have? So why do you want to do a cleanse? There's no real right or wrong answers to these. It's just kind of good to know, what are your goals for the cleanse and beyond? And do you have support to undertake a cleanse? And what I mean by that is, do you have family members and friends and people who are around you who are going to support what you're doing, and potentially even, help take care of the kids and let you nap, and you can take a few days off work, and any sort of support you have that's going to make it easier for you to rest and take care of yourself. And then your own state of health, and this is what the last 2 talks were kind of getting you to think about, is how is your overall state of health? What is your overall state of health, especially your gut health? Do you have symptoms? Do you have things that are concerning? That a cleanse might make those things worse, or it might just bring things to the surface, and you might have an experience that is unexpected if you don't really take stock of where your health is at before you start. And then, are you really willing to make changes? Because I think that's an important part of a cleanse. It's that kickoff starting point, and then what do you want to do after? And then, so this is when someone should cleanse, or I think like a good candidate for cleansing. You're in good health. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive. People think, but this is going to make me healthier. Cleansing like this to me is for someone who's already in basically good health. They might have some things that they want to correct or modify, and we're going to talk about that too. But you're basically in pretty good health. You're not taking multiple pharmaceutical medications. You can take a break from work for a few days, even if it's just taking the weekend off, like really taking the weekend off and doing nothing. And then the times to do it are traditionally spring and fall equinox. We're a little late this year. I got on this a little bit late, but those transition times between seasons are historically and traditionally the times when people would cleanse for health and for spiritual reasons. And then some of the reasons why someone might choose not to cleanse at a moment in time is you're currently being treated for some chronic, maybe deeper seated health conditions with lots of symptoms. You're taking multiple pharmaceutical medications that you can't stop taking. You have a known gut imbalance that's pretty heavy, like you have a lot of yeast overgrowth or parasites or bacteria, and that's causing you a lot of symptoms. And you really can't take a break from your life or slow down or stop at all. Like you're just going to be going, working 60 hours a week. And that's a really hard situation to do a cleanse because there's always a little bit of stress on the body when you're asking it to detox. Detoxification takes some energy. So then you've taken stock and sort of assessed what you want out of this, and how do you think your body's going to respond? Do you think it's a good idea? And you say, okay, yes, I'm ready to do it. So what are the benefits of doing this? What am I going to get out of it? And how do I choose what to do, what to eat, what to drink, supplements to take? And this is kind of the bulk of it. So the benefits are immense. They can be. And this is just sort of the basics. So a big one is digestive rest. Digestion requires an immense amount of energy. It requires more energy from our body on a daily basis than any other function in our system. So by eating very easy to digest foods or drinking only liquids, we're literally just allowing the intestines to rest. And all of that effort that the body would put into digesting and absorbing nutrients can be used for other things, taking down inflammation in all areas of the body, maybe fighting chronic infections, helping to rebuild or detox excess hormones, all kinds of things. So that's where we get into the reset, which is a little lower down there, the reset of bodily systems. It also resets our taste buds. This is actually something that surprises a lot of people when they do a cleanse. Most cleanses are very bland. It intentionally takes out sweet, salty, spicy, pungent, all those really big flavors. And when you start to eat food again, things that you didn't think were sweet, like jasmine rice, suddenly taste incredibly sweet. So our taste buds tend to be overly triggered, overly taxed by excess salt and sugar and just lots of flavor. And then we come to expect that. We have this sort of high level desire for really seasoned, salted, sweet foods. And by resetting that, we're resetting our palate and helping control food cravings and just really being able to taste food again. Weight loss is obviously a big reason why a lot of people do cleansing. Most of the toxins in our body are held in fat cells. And so there's always going to be some weight loss if you have a healthy system. That's why being relatively healthy, you're going to get some weight loss. If you do a cleanse and you don't lose any weight at all, and everything seems about the same, that's a big key. Like all of your symptoms feel the same. That's a big key that there's something else going on that needs to be addressed before you can really get these benefits from a cleanse. It will lower your toxic burden because, like I said, fat cells are liberated. The toxins are going to come out of not only fat cells, other tissues. Decreases inflammation all over the body, in every system. Resets bodily systems, meaning like blood sugar control and hormone regulation and immune system function. All of those things that your body maybe is feeling a little taxed and can't get to them because there's some digestive imbalance. Those things can sort of come back online. And then, as I mentioned before, cleansing is really customizable. So you can add things, take things out, depending on what the individual person really needs. So some examples of a cleanse would be mono diets, where you just eat a single food, a soup or something really simple for days or even weeks or months at a time, sometimes as much as a month or 6 weeks. There's sort of the common, what's out there on the internet, there's a lot of different versions of protein shakes or fruit and vegetable smoothies and various different supplements to help cleanse the liver and such. I would call that middle one sort of the internet bundle of cleansing. You see a lot of different things out there about this. And then the combo cleanse, which is really what I've put together for all of you. That's a combination of liquids and a mono diet and some supplements, but chosen very carefully to be accessible to more people and to be to not cause symptoms in people that might be a little more sensitive. So some of you may have heard of, the Ayurvedic cleanse is Kitchari. I love Kitchari, and I've done this quite a few times. It's an example of a mono diet where you literally just eat Kitchari, which is a combination of rice, mung beans, ghee, and spices. And it's very simple. It's pretty bland. In India, if you go to do panchakarma, you will eat nothing but kitchari for sometimes a month before they start in on the deep cleansing process. You have to have pretty good digestion to do this. A lot of people with gut dysfunction can't digest lentils or mung beans, and the rice might be a little bit too much carbohydrate or starch if there's glucose issues. So the benefits of this is it's really nourishing and warming for someone who tends to be underweight, maybe struggling with things like chronic fatigue, or feeling like they can't keep weight on, but they've got some digestive issues, some nausea, maybe IBS. This is a really good one as long as someone can digest mung beans. It tends to feed imbalance and overgrowth, and then there's cooking required, which, you know, some people don't want to have to cook during a cleanse, and so that can be a turn off to something like this. This sort of what's out there on the internet with, you know, different kinds of protein shakes, and the protein can be from various sources. Lots of fruit and vegetable smoothies, or juices like fresh juices, or vegetables and fruits just like in a Vitamix. Lots of different detox supplements, usually geared toward liver detox. There's no cooking for this, you know, throw things in a blender, so people really like that. You also have to have really good digestion for this. Anytime you're doing raw fruits and vegetables, that tends to create more gut imbalance. It's going to feed the bad stuff, whether it be yeast, bacteria, or parasites. And there's often a lot of mixing of fruits and vegetables and proteins that's not great during a cleanse. And this is one of the reasons I think it's great to do a guided cleanse with someone with some experience and in a group, because you get to customize things a little bit more. And often people will do cleanses like this and they'll say, oh, I felt terrible. And they think it's just detox terrible, but sometimes it's just the combination of things that is making them feel awful. And then taking lots of capsules or tablets or supplements in that form can actually be very irritating to the gut lining. And again, if there is gut imbalance, that will tend to make people feel worse, just simply having to digest a tablet or a capsule. So the combo version, which is really my made up term, based on what I've done over the course of the last 20 years, I've designed a combo cleanse that's suitable to a lot of people. It's usually a combination of some protein or juice and whole foods that involves vegetables, cooked, supplements, but in liquid or IV form, so that your body doesn't have to digest all those capsules and tablets. This can actually be helpful, or at least not harmful, in gut imbalance. So even if people have some mild gut imbalance that they're not aware of, this will tend to aggravate that less. And I've designed it that way on purpose, so that someone just venturing into this on their own is likely not going to cause themselves a lot of distress. And it can actually help in starving out some of those bugs that you might not want in there. You can also adjust these sorts of cleanses to the caloric needs of the individual. So someone who's got a really high metabolism, exercises a lot, they're going to need more calories, and they're probably going to want to eat more protein. So you can always add fat, you can add more protein for people who need it, or you can decrease those things if people really don't need that. There is some cooking required in my version, at least. Again, some people don't like that. But you can cook in batches, and it usually lasts for a few days. And then this one can be done without really taking time off of work. I do recommend that people do that if they can, just because one of the benefits of a cleanse is also just rest and kind of de-stressing your body and letting the body and the mind completely relax, both, you know, in all areas, getting better rest, getting better sleep at night, taking naps. But it can be done without really taking a break from your life. So then the details, what do we actually put into these things? What are you actually eating? What are you actually doing? So the customized version, like I said, I think is the best choice for most people, because you're going to address your own needs, calorie needs, health concerns, all of that sort of stuff. And this is in my mind, what a good cleanse should be, and this what fills in these circles in the details will vary from person to person, but it should be hypoallergenic. So it shouldn't have a lot of stuff in it that is a common allergen. Someone may not know that they're sensitive to a food, so you want to try and make anything that you're putting into your mouth as low on the allergenic scale as possible. You want everything you're eating or drinking to be easy to digest. And then any supplements or even the foods that you're choosing should support the body's detox pathways. And we're going to talk a lot about what that means. It's not just the liver, that's a big part of it, but you want to support all the detox pathways in the body. So to me, there's usually some sort of green food, and in my cleanse that I do for myself and that I share with other people, Bieler Broth is my kind of go-to. It's an eclectic recipe that was designed by, I think his name was Henry Bieler, at the turn of the century. It is an adrenal supportive alkaline broth made from cooked pureed vegetables. It's exactly what you saw in that photo. It's this really beautiful bright green color. It's very bland. It's full of minerals, antioxidants, and vitamins. Because it's alkaline, it helps take away acidity in the body that can lead to pain and inflammation, so it's very anti-inflammatory. It's really easy to digest, and it's super simple to make. You just throw everything in a pot, cook it for 15 minutes, and puree it. Really easy. And I actually kind of like it. You can make a more culinary version that you could serve for dinner, but then there's the fasting version that's pretty darn bland, but really helpful. Bone broth, to me, is one of those miracle foods that when people are wanting to lose weight, lower inflammation, all the things we talked about, bone broth, particularly homemade bone broth, is filled with so many wonderful benefits. It's optional in the cleanse that I do, but if people have more autoimmune conditions or inflammation, or they have known gut imbalance, bone broth is a really great addition. It can actually be done as its own cleanse. You could just do bone broth and nothing else for a good long period of time and be completely fine. It's, like I said, it's optional in the cleanse that I do. It's best when you make it yourself, beef or chicken, and there's reasons to choose one or the other depending on the person. It's really easy to digest. It's filled with so many minerals and gelatin. The gelatin is really good for the immune system. The minerals are in a super absorbable form, so the body absorbs them very easily. And it also provides a lot of detox nutrients that the liver needs for all the different detox pathways. And then it's anti-inflammatory, especially if you're using grass-fed beef bones, just anti-inflammatory to the body in general. The only caveat being if someone has a beef allergy. And that is something that can happen to people with chronic Lyme disease as a symptom of the illness, but not super common. And like I said, you could just do bone broth. And I have done that, and it is great if you're recovering from an illness too. You're just not really feeling like eating. Bone broth post cold or flu or something is a great way to go. Protein shakes is something that I kind of avoided for a long time because I'm not a big fan of protein powders. I tend to like whole foods better. I just feel like, they're more absorbable, they're clean, they're not processed into something else like a powder. But protein shakes are important, especially for caloric intake for people. And so I've added them in over the years into my own cleansing and with patients. So again, this is one of the ways you can adjust for the caloric needs. You can leave it out entirely if you feel like you don't need it. You can drink more in a day. I usually do once a day when I'm personally cleansing, but people can do more than that. There's lots of different protein choices. My preference is bone broth powder, again, for all the reasons I mentioned about bone broth, but it's also the least allergenic of the bunch. Whey is made from dairy, typically not the thing I like to use with cleansing. It just tends to cause more inflammation, especially if there is any imbalance in the gut. Pea and rice are okay, Pea, again, is one of those that comes from a legume, and so that can have allergenic properties. Rice is pretty non-allergenic, but it's a carbohydrate. So again, it's going to increase some of the glucose metabolism and increase carbohydrates, which isn't terrible, and again, just kind of depends on the person's needs. Protein of any kind also supports those detoxification pathways in the liver by providing an abundance of easily absorbable amino acids. And then you can customize these protein shakes a little bit by adding fat for extra calories. So you can add a spoonful of homemade ghee, you can add a spoonful of nut butter, and of course, no cooking. Super simple and easy to make, takes like 3 minutes. And they are a really good addition to a cleanse. And then the topic of supplements. I chose this picture intentionally because of all the pills and tablets. And they're really not necessary. Supplements are not necessary during a cleanse. And in my mind, it's better to just stop taking all pills during a cleanse if possible for that digestion piece. We don't want the body having to break down the cellulose or gelatin or, heat processed tablets. And in certain gut imbalances, particularly SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, pills and tablets can be particularly irritating, and they can actually aggravate symptoms. So if I do supplements at all during a cleanse, and I usually make it optional for people, of course, medications that people can't stop taking, like thyroid medication and stuff, you, of course, can keep taking. But liquid, injectable, or IV are preferable. And if people really need that extra support for detoxification, or they feel like they've got a lot of toxic load, IVs are great. Injectable glutathione is wonderful, injectable B vitamins. And then there's some liquid Bs and some liquid glutathione and stuff too that's also really useful. Cleansing in general is about taking stuff away. It's more of a destructive than an additive process. We're trying to remove things from the body, and so less is more. We always want to take stuff out of the diet, take stuff out of our daily lives, including all the pills that we take, if possible. So the things that are not part of a cleanse: sugar, alcohol, caffeine, fruit, and added fiber. So sugar and alcohol, probably a no-brainer. Caffeine is one of those that I know someone's going to ask, do I have to give up my morning coffee? Because I get that question every single time. No, you don't, but you can't have cream or sugar. And depending what your goals are and what your own personal goals are for your own health, cleansing is a great way to get rid of a caffeine addiction. Now, if part of your caffeine consumption is because you're actually really tired and you have some adrenal fatigue, the cleanse is probably going to make you more tired, and giving up caffeine is probably not going to be doable in a short period of time. So you have to assess where you're actually at, how much energy do you have to expend. So I would say caffeine is optional, but no dairy, no sugar. Fruit is also a thing that people are like, what? I can't have fruit on a cleanse. This is my personal addition. Any kind of sugar, even fructose, and fructose is particularly aggravating to certain gut imbalances, again, particularly SIBO and yeast overgrowth. So we want to keep our blood sugar as balanced as possible. We want to reset our taste buds, get away from all of those sweet flavors we have in our life. And we don't want to feed anything that might be in the gut. We want to try and correct that imbalance and starve things out a little bit. And then I also never add fiber during cleanses. And part of the reason for that is fiber, again, is a tricky thing. We talked about that in the last series. There's so many different kinds of fiber. Some are helpful, some are harmful. It really depends on the person. But again, it's another additional thing that I think is not necessary. When we start to clean out the body, we want to see what the digestive system does on its own before we start really adding a bunch of stuff back in. A concern for a lot of people during a cleanse is constipation. And so this is optional, or it could be altered if someone really needed, but fiber often makes constipation worse anyways. So I try not to add things like this during a cleanse. So during a cleanse, like we've been talking about, there's definitely some detoxification that's going to happen. And we want to do as much as we possibly can for the body to help it in its detoxification processes. So these are the areas that our body uses to detox. Large intestine, obviously, and that goes along with the liver. The liver and the gallbladder help dump things into the large intestine, and then it comes out with bowel movements. Skin is a huge one, and for some people that's a big one. If you're a person who tends to exhibit inflammation on your skin, rashes, eczema, acne, you can potentially get an aggravation in those things during a cleanse, and that's not necessarily a bad sign. Lungs is another one. So breathing, deep breathing exercise, and then the bladder, also kind of a minor player, but the kidneys do detox a fair amount of especially heavy metals. And so we want to make sure we're supporting all of these pathways so that none of them are clogged. They're all moving freely and the toxins can get out of the body. So the skin is a huge one, obviously the largest organ in the body. It's huge. These are some simple things you can do to improve skin during a cleanse. So dry skin brushing, which we can talk about the details, but it's a way of moving lymph, but it also helps take off that excess layer of dead cells on the outside. It's very light brushing with a soft bristled brush. Not using soap on your larger parts, parts of the body, obviously you can soap, armpits and such, but soap destroys the acid mantle of the skin. And actually harms the pH of the skin. So I always tell people it's better to oil yourself before a shower with some coconut oil and just kind of let the water rinse it off. But basically never use soap on your skin, even on your face. And then try to replace that with good oils. Jojoba oil is great. Coconut oil is great. Sesame oil or sunflower oil. You can add essential oils. The skin loves oil. The cells of our body are made up of fat, and so oil is a great thing to do. Lungs, so slow, deep breathing. For those of you who've ever taken a yoga class, you've probably heard of Nadi Shodhana, which I misspelled. That's supposed to be S-H-O, not S-H-A. Alternate nostril breathing. There are other breathing exercises, Kapalabhati. There's another one that I'm forgetting the name. I was a yoga teacher once upon a time, so pulling this out of the recesses of my brain. And then exercising to your own capacity and energy. There's sometimes a tendency to over-exercise during a cleanse, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to push your detox pathways too fast, but you do want to encourage the release of those toxins. So exercise is absolutely allowed during a cleanse, but you want to do it only to the point where you feel energized. If you feel debilitated or even get insomnia the night after a big round of exercise, that means you pushed yourself too hard. The bladder, so one simple way that we can, a couple simple ways we can encourage better bladder function is just to drink plenty of filtered water throughout the day. And during a cleanse, you want to shoot for at least 3 to 4 quarts of water, depending on your body weight. Adding liquid minerals to your water. I like concentrates minerals made from seawater, but there's lots of them. And lots of different herbal teas. And we can talk about more specifics for any of you who want to do the cleanse. We can talk about specific herbal teas to add for specific things. And if bladder is an issue for you, if you have a history of UTIs or it's kind of a weak spot for you, there are bladder specific herbs that you can do in tea that are really supportive. And then, of course, the large intestine I left for last because it's kind of the big one. You want to make sure things are moving through. You want to make sure that you're having bowel movements every day. Lymphatic massage can help to get the lymph to dump into the larger vessels and into the large intestine. Castor oil packs, another kind of old school treatment, but if you have a tendency toward digestive dysfunction, castor oil packs are a great thing to do. They're also warm and just calming and relaxing. And then coffee enemas have been a saving grace for me over the years, many, many times. They not only help clean out the colon, they also, enemas in general versus colonics, because they're retained with gravity, help to re-educate the stretch receptors in the large intestine. So if someone has been chronically constipated, the colon tends to get overstretched, and those stretch receptors no longer respond. And so one way to re-educate that is to do enemas, not necessarily coffee enemas, but coffee enemas also have the added benefit of stimulating glutathione production in the liver, and glutathione is something we want when we're doing more detoxification. It also can help stimulate the contraction of the gallbladder, which helps release more bile, and bile is the body's natural binder. So it's going to bind toxins, bacterial die-off, yeast die-off, heavy metals, used up hormones, anything that the body needs to get rid of will bind, well, the bile will bind it. And then often we'll add binders to a system as well to help pull that bile out. Not during a cleanse, but just in general. And then colonics. I think there are a couple colonics places here in Marin. Colonics are forced water, so things, water goes in and out simultaneously. It's usually a closed system where things are rinsed out through the machine. So it's very clean, it's easy. It doesn't have the same stimulating effects on the body, but it is a great way to kind of kick off a cleanse, or to like even once during a 5-day cleanse will often help relieve headaches and those detox symptoms, because anything that might be stuck in the large intestine just gets flushed out, and it really does relieve a lot of symptoms. And so the end point of a cleanse, that's really up to the person. You know, you can cleanse for long periods of time. 3 to 5 days is the minimum. For women, you really have to do at least 3 days for your body to get into burning fat cells. It takes about 72 hours. So I usually tell people, if you make it through the 3rd day, which the first 3 days are usually the toughest, just shoot for 5, because then you're getting a little bit more clean out, you're getting a little bit more detoxification. And if you're feeling great at 5 days and you want to keep going, you absolutely can. Especially if you're sleeping well, your energy is good, you know, nothing is telling you to stop, then you can continue. And you just stop when you feel ready and adjust things as you go along. Maybe you're feeling great, but you're starting to feel a little more hungry, so you add in a little extra protein shake. Or you're not feeling hungry and you feel like you want to detox more and your energy is good, and you take the shake out for a day or two. And then always making sure to step back into your life slowly and gently, both literally just starting your life back up again, whether it's taking care of kids or going to work or whatever it is that you do, kind of gently easing back into that routine, and maybe trying to hold on to a little bit of what you've gotten from the cleanse. And also foods, adding foods back in slowly. A cleanse is a great way to determine food allergies. The cleanse I designed is very hypoallergenic, so it takes out all the common things: eggs, gluten, dairy. And if you add each of those things in slowly when you end the cleanse, you will know if you'll get a response if you're allergic to something or sensitive. So some other considerations besides the body, besides just what are we eating and how are we detoxing, stress and our daily life play a huge role in our health in general. And there's been so much about this in the media lately, stress and sleep, but also some considerations during a cleanse, like what can you do to reset this? You know, we're resetting our bodily systems and we're resetting our taste buds, and it's so much about resetting. So how can we also take that into our daily life and our habits and routines? So just a brief little mention of things beyond the physical body or in conjunction with the physical body. Stress affects our entire body. We all know this. There's been tons of research that shows the immune system is depressed when we're under heavy loads of stress. And it can be low-grade, chronic, ongoing stress. Doesn't have to be a major thing. And inflammation is increased. And really all that means is that the immune system is lowered, and you get inflammation in different parts of the body that might cause pain. It might cause insomnia. It might, inflammation can cause all kinds of symptoms. So finding any way that works for you to decrease stress, especially while you're doing a cleanse, but then also whatever you learn, whatever helps, remembering that so that you can take that into the rest of your life when you come out of a cleanse. But that's a big reason to have support and to try and take some time out. to really feel where you're feeling stressed in your life and how can you manage that. Because unfortunately, there's no magic bullet for stress. People always ask me, what can I do to not be as stressed out? And that's so person specific. It's a really hard thing to do, but it's definitely a worthy goal for all of us to try and decrease our stress load over time. And free time. So this is another thing that we often don't think a lot about, but you have more time on a cleanse because you're not cooking, you're not shopping, you're not, hopefully not. Hopefully you don't still have to cook for your family. You can pawn that off on someone else. But most time people have a little bit more free time during a cleanse. So try to really sink into that and enjoy it. Do something you haven't done in a long time. Do something you really love and just practice doing nothing. Like literally just sitting in a chair and staring at the trees. It's something that we do not do enough of. And it's so calming to the nervous system. Even if it's 5 to 10 minutes of sitting still and staring off into space and enjoying the scenery is really, really beneficial. And then less screen time. It's so hard right now during COVID, I know, but less screen time, especially before bed, is something to try to shoot for during a cleanse. And then maybe if that's a habit of yours to be on your phone or computer before bed, just trying to get rid of that habit during this time, because that's also very beneficial to our sleep and stress and overall inflammation. And then sleep is just, I cannot stress sleep enough. Sleep is so important. It's mandatory for proper detoxification. A lot of our detoxification happens at night when our digestive system is turned off, basically. We're not digesting food. So you really want to encourage, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, let yourself sleep in if you can, sleep more. Naps are great. Naps are great anyways, 15 to 30 minutes in the afternoon. Try not to let yourself sleep past an hour because then you'll start to go into deeper sleep and that can throw off your nighttime sleep cycle. But little mini naps in the afternoon actually refresh us and it's a natural cortisol low and it can really rejuvenate you. So if you have any issues around sleep or occasional troubles with insomnia, this is another really good time as you're taking some stress off your system to recalibrate your sleep habits. And then the reintroduction process. This is also something, people get all geared up for the actual cleanse and they get ready for what they can eat and what they can't eat. And they're prepared for it. And then they kind of give up at the end and they're like, okay, now I'm just ready to eat food again. So I'd really encourage people to not do that and to really try and think of the whole entire cleanse as a 2 to 3 week process. Even if you're only following the food and supplement guidelines for 5 to 7 days, try to think of it as a lead in cleanse and then, intro and outro basically. And you can make that reintroduction as slow as you need it to be to really recalibrate things. So this is the time that you really want to make changes. During the cleanse, everything is set for you, what you eat and don't eat. But then when you start to be able to add foods back in, it's the time for you to make changes in habits like sleep habits, exercise habits, but also what you're eating, when you're eating, how you're eating, all the things we talked about in the last 2 talks. And then try to add in one food at a time, especially if you're concerned about food sensitivities and you really want to know. This is the best way to judge. A food sensitivity could be anything. It can be a racing heart after you eat a food within 15 to 30 minutes. It can be absolute fatigue, like you have to go lay down, any kind of gut disturbance, a skin rash, within the day that you eat the food, just about anything, but it'll usually be pretty extreme if you haven't had that food in a week or 2. And then anything you've learned about yourself, your health, your habits, just keep that in mind as you start to sort of hold on to that feeling that you've created during the cleanse as you re-enter into your life and start adding things back in. And then just a few reminders in general about cleansing. When you're asking yourself those questions about, do I want to do a cleanse? Is this right for me? What are my goals? Be honest with yourself about your own state of health and what your body and mind can handle. Get the support that you need, if possible, before jumping into something like this. Set reasonable goals for yourself. Don't say, you know, I want to lose 30 pounds in 5 days, probably not reasonable. And then also try to enter into the process of a cleanse like an explorer. It's an adventure, and be open to discovering something new about yourself or about your health or the resilience of your body, whatever it may be. Often people will learn things, they'll gain some really great insights during a cleanse on all levels. And so just being open to that is a great way to enter in. And then rest, of course, we talked about that. Just rest and sleep. This is your time to take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Choose wisely. So, you know, go over the options we've talked about. Think about what's best for you. If you have known food allergies and health conditions, really try to tailor something to yourself that's going to make you feel better, not make you feel worse. Everyone's going to feel a little crummy the first couple days. That's normal. But overall, you want something that's suited to you. And there's no one perfect cleanse like you read out there on the internet. This is the best cleanse for everyone. This is the best liver detox. There's no such thing, because we're all such individuals. You really need to choose something that works for you. And less is always more in a cleanse. So remove things, habits, toxins, computer screens, phones, whatever it is that's in our way of being a healthier person overall. We want to try and remove as much of that as possible. So if after hearing all of this, and I know this talk when I was writing it sounds like I'm really trying to dissuade you from doing a cleanse. I'm not. It is super helpful. I've done them a bunch in my life, and I've always found them to be useful for one reason or another. But if after all of this discussion you are still interested, and you think it would be fun adventure and it would be good for you, I just ask that everyone email me after today with their interest, saying, yes, I want to do it. And then for the group of people that are interested, we'll schedule a separate Zoom session where I'll actually send you a zip file with all of with the outline, the recipes, the actual list of things to eat and not eat. And then you'll receive a separate link to purchase the supplements that you decide you want. And then the cleanse begins really when you want it to. So once everyone receives the things that they want, or that they've decided to use, you can start. And it's a great preamble, because there's going to be a little time to wait, like 5 days of ordering things. That's a great time to lead into the cleanse. And we're going to talk about that for anyone who wants to join the group cleanse. We're going to talk about easing in slowly will so improve your experience and your outcome at the end. And then depending who's interested, we'll put together some sort of forum for discussion. Either we'll have an email chain or a private Facebook page, or a Slack group or something like that, where people can instant message. If people want to do that, I will set it up. So I think that's about it for tonight. This one actually ended up being a little shorter than the others. Again, you guys all have my email, but you can find me at drpedro@bewellnaturalmedicine.net. And I will send out this recording to everyone in the next couple of days.